we're going to talk about the elections process in Georgia. And as the voter education coordinator for the Savannah area, I talk with civic, community, and faith-based groups about how the system works and how to get involved in elections. Today, there's a few things I wanted to go over: how to be a paid poll worker, how to request and submit an absentee ballot, voting in person with the ATI, which is the audio tactile interface, which is helpful for voters with a visual challenge, and also registering to vote for the November general election. Every year in Georgia, elections are made possible because of thousands of citizens who step up to this extraordinary call to be a poll worker. It's estimated more than 5 million Georgians will come out and vote in more than 2,600 precincts for this November general election. And having poll workers is the key to ensuring that all of the registered voters can exercise their right on election day. But with this record-breaking turnout we're expected, along with this continued challenge of COVID-19, the need for poll workers has become greater than ever. Poll workers make sure that the precinct is open and ready for voters at 7 a.m. So they usually get there about 6 o'clock and start setting up the equipment. They can't leave the precinct until all the voters have cast a ballot and the paperwork has been finished. Poll workers greet all the voters. So being patient is important during a long day. They make sure that voters with a documented disability or who are older than 75 come to the front of the line so they can get the first available voting booth. During this COVID-19 pandemic, our poll workers are playing such a critical role because they're ensuring that they're measuring out the space for social distancing, not only in the line, but also between the equipment. They are sanitizing every piece of equipment, whether it's the ballot marking device, the printers that people touch. There need to be at the scanner to ensure that voters don't walk out with a ballot. Here's a demonstration ballot, because if somebody walks out, it's too late. So somebody needs to stand there, make sure all of them are put into the scanner and give people their I voted sticker. There's jobs requiring that you sit all day, requiring you to register voters through the poll pad that's like an iPad. Poll workers who go need to be ready to stand or sit all day, so wear comfortable clothing. They also need to plan in advance how they'll vote, because unless you get assigned to the precinct that is normally your voting precinct, you'll need to vote in advance. In Georgia, we allow 3 weeks of early voting plus a Saturday voting. And I know in Chatham, they also do a Sunday voting day. Right now in Georgia, our 159 counties, most all of them need poll workers, and they're in training right now and hiring. The easiest way to become a poll worker is to go to securevotegeorgia.com. When you go to this website, a pop-up will appear and you put in your information and county, and it will be directly sent to your county elections office. This way you don't need to know the number for your county elections office. You'll be immediately directed. But I know a lot of us don't answer phone calls from people who aren't in our call log. So I want you to just be cognizant that if you decide to work as a poll worker, you're going to get a follow-up call and probably an email. And they'll need you to respond to that with information on how to proceed with your application. There's a couple Georgia laws for being a poll worker. You have to be at least 16 years old, read, write, and speak English, and live or work in the county where you plan to help. I want you to know that the counties are responsible for who they hire and training the employees. So some counties like Liberty, Bryan, Effingham may have different pay scales that are set by the county. The Board of Elections proposes how much to pay the poll workers, but it's the county budget that determines how much they can be paid. Also, the counties determine how much training. I know a lot of the people participating today are in Chatham, so I want you to know that Chatham poll workers start at $165 per day. They get $40 for 3 hours of training, and if you are computer educated, a tech start at $330 a day. I'm just wanting to make a quick comment that those are really good pay rates, because in some smaller counties in Georgia, they get paid as little as $60 a day as a poll worker. And I want you to know too that you can't just work a few hours. They don't have like a morning, afternoon, evening shift. The pay rate of $165, let's say for Chatham, is all day. Once you arrive and until the polls close and all the paperwork is submitted. I want to just repeat that anyone can apply at securevotegeorgia.com, and also mention that you'd want to bring your own food, because although some poll managers and supervisors provide food for their workers, it's not required under state law. So you might want to be prepared and have your meals there. I want to go over absentee ballot requests. Now, when the pandemic began, the Secretary sent out 6.9 million absentee ballot requests to register Georgia voters. We got back 1 million. Under state law, the counties are supposed to respond to requests through the voters. So this time around, the counties are going to be processing those again. This is what an absentee ballot request looks like. And you can find that at my voter page, which is mvp.ga.sos.gov. You can also find it on your county website page, and I'll give that for Chatham. That's voter.chathamcountyga.gov. Now, when you have one of these absentee ballot requests, I want to tell you the most important thing is where it says signature or mark of voter. It needs to be signed. If this isn't signed, it's going to hold up processing sending your ballot request. If you get a request like this, because there's a few different ones floating around, you don't need to know your voter registration number, but you do need to put in the date of the election that you're requesting the ballot, your name, your address that's on file with your voter registration, your date of birth, information about the type of ballot. That's generally during a primary or a runoff. The general election, there's no need to put down a party. And let me just double check on that, because that's what I know, but for some reason saying it out loud, it makes me feel a little nervous. The contact information, please put down your phone number and an email, and that way, if there's any problem with your request, they can get in touch with you immediately. You can either send it in by mail at P.O. Box 13757, Savannah 31416, or you can even fax it, and that's 912-790-1519. You can even scan it, take a picture of it, and email it to Chatham, and that would be voter@chathamcounty.org. You can even go in person and fill out this absentee ballot request. And just one thing again, remember, sign where it says the voter. You can even track when they received your request. You can track when they sent it to you, and you can track when it was counted. This is hard to see, but this is my own absentee ballot request that I tracked last night from the June 9th primary. And it says here the date of what I voted, when I requested it, which was April 14th. Then they issued it on the 21st, and then they accepted my ballot on May 22nd. So that's all available for all registered voters through mvp.ga.sos.gov. Under House Bill 316, which was passed when we got the new machines, notification of people, information about their absentee ballot requests or absentee ballots was hastened. So now if there is a problem with your information, if it's 12 days out from an election, then they have 2 business days to contact you. If it's sooner than 12 days before the election, they have to contact you the next day. That's why it's so important to put an email or a phone number so they can expedite this information. And unless you're older than 65, military, or have a disability, you'll need to make a new absentee ballot request for every election. Otherwise, if you fit that criteria, you can fill out the information on your absentee ballot and it will do a rollover. It's here at the bottom, eligibility to receive mail ballots for the remainder of the election cycle. And then you would just check the box that applies and you will be on file to receive the absentee ballots for the remainder of that election year. Now, when you're filling out an absentee ballot, you know, we had more absentee ballots with that June 9th primary than ever in Georgia's history. Not only did it cause a lot of work at the county, but it caused some confusion for voters. First of all, when we look at this demonstration ballot, the most important thing is to first review your ballot and make sure you know what you want to select before you start marking on it, because you don't want to have to request another one. Any stray marks will make it difficult for a scanner to read, because these do go into an electronic scanner to not only select the choices and make the tally, but it also keeps a major count of all of the selections people have made. Once you've decided, okay, this is how I'm going to vote, the only thing to use is a blue or black pen. We saw a lot of people making check marks, some people making strike throughs, some people putting X's. It must follow the directions, and the oval next to your selection must be completely filled in for the scanner to read it. Now, if your ballot is kicked out, that's another reason why they would contact you. In Georgia, we've only had a 0.7% in the June 9th election of rejection of absentee ballots. What was the number one reason? The number one reason is people didn't return them on time. What was the number two reason? They didn't sign the back of the envelope where it asked you to sign your oath. Now, I want you to know that nationally, the numbers are 1% and over, generally maybe 2%, but 0.7% was very good. So I think that there was a lot of good education and people followed the directions, but I just want to make sure that your absentee ballot isn't rejected and you have to be called to maybe show identification or sign again in the office. So make sure there's no stray marks, and that on the envelope, which I'm sorry, I don't have an example, it has the oath and you sign your name, because in Georgia, we have a two-step I can't say the word, Ava. Authentication. I even looked it up last night because I can't seem to get that word out, but it checks your signature against the signature that you registered with, whether it was in the driver's license department or whether you went into the county office. And if they don't look the same, they will want to contact you to make sure it's a valid ballot. Now, we need to submit these absentee ballots early, because the United States Postal Service is already saying that for a piece of mail to get on the other side of some counties, it could take 10 days. September 15th is the earliest day that you can expect your absentee ballot, but you can already request one. You can request it 180 days before an election. So we could all get off this call and call our local county elections office, or download the application and mail it in, or email it in, fax it in, and have that already in the queue. So on September 15th, when they start processing who wants these at-home voting ballots, that they can start sending them out. If you have any questions about Chatham County voter registration, that's at 912-790-1520. And if you have any questions about other counties like Bryan, Effingham, Liberty, feel free to call me personally. I know all the election supervisors. I'll give you their information. That's 470-989-8833. I just want to be really emphatic that because of COVID and so many people are voting at home, and already with this August 11th runoff, 2/3 of the people who voted have done it from home. We have about 250,000 ballots cast, and 2/3 of that were done with absentee ballots. So there is a cutoff for absentee ballots, but this cutoff was legally made way before COVID. It's a 3-day turnaround. There is no way, I believe, that if someone asks for an absentee ballot 3 days before the election, that they can receive it, vote it, and return it, even if they put it in a drop box, because most counties have a drop box. Chatham, Bryan, Effingham, Liberty. And have it well before any of the deadlines. In-person voting. We're going to demonstrate the new paper ballot system. And when this was chosen, the highest priority for Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger was security, next audibility, so that they could verify the vote. And also that people of all abilities were able to exercise their right to vote with some privacy. And I'm going to demonstrate that in a moment. But first, when you first arrive at your precinct, you'll need to present some ID. Some acceptable ID is your Georgia driver's license, your Georgia voter ID, a photo ID of any branch, department, agency, any Georgia entity, any other state or the US, your US passport, your employee ID with a photo, your military ID, your tribal ID. What if you go and you forgot your ID? You'll never be turned away. You'll be asked to sign and fill out a provisional ballot, which is a paper ballot, but you must return to the precinct or to the elections office. You must return to the elections office within 3 days to make sure that that vote counts. Because if you've ever watched the news, and I used to do a lot of election stories. I remember when Russell Bridges, who's the election supervisor for Chatham, would tell me, now those are the results, Sharyl, but remember, we have provisional ballots, so nothing is final until those are counted. So I just want you to know that you do have, I would, if you forget your ID and you need to bring it back, I would go the next day and show that to make sure that your ballot counts. And you can even look at the myvoterpage.sos.ga.gov to see that it was accepted, because they'll do that on provisional ballots too. Now this voting system can be presented just visually or through audio or both ways. So me and Ava, my 17-year-old daughter, who's a senior in high school, she is going to use the ATI, the accessible voting session, to navigate, to make selections for the ballot. And this is what the ATI looks like. And I'm gonna hold the camera closer. Of different shapes and sizes for tactile recognition. There's also Braille on the controller. Voters can adjust the rate and volume of their audio ballot. So let's go ahead and cast one using the audio. And this is what a voter would hear if they were wearing headphones, but we've used an external speaker so you can hear the process. When you first come to your machine, the first thing you're going to want to do is put your voter card in with the microchip going in first. Here is
test navigation. Press yellow left button or blue up button to navigate to options allowing you to change language, text size, audio settings, contrast, and navigate the ballot. Press the red select button.
So what she's going to do is hit the red select to choose that ballot.
Press the red select button. To text size to select, press the language.
Demonstration ballot, state of Georgia.
To go ballot information.
What is the state?
Now, if you want to advance, you can advance with the yellow right or the blue down button.
This contest and hear the list of choices. Press
The chair.
So it said, if you want to vote, she had to select with the red button. Then to go to the choices, she's going to use the blue button or the yellow button. Then when she wants to make the choice, she's going to hit select.
You selected.
The daffodil.
To deselect this choice, press the red select button. This is the single selected choice in the contest. To go to the next action,
So what
press
they
the
said
right
was,
button
if
or
you
blue
want
down
to
button. To go to the
choose
contest
something else, you'll
description,
hit the
press
red
yellow
button
left
again
button or view
to
unselected.
deselect. But let's say we want that
Deselected.
one. Then she's going to go down to the next
Next, to go to the
contest
next
by using the
contest,
blue
press the red
button to
select
go
button.
down.
To go to
And
the
see
next option,
here,
press yellow right
it went
button
to
or blue down
next.
button. To go to the free
What is the state bird?
contest.
What is the state bird? Vote for 1. The brown thrasher.
Is you selected.
The brown thrasher.
Next, to go to the next contest, press the red select button.
Georgia is the nation's #1 producer. This repeat, what are they?
Contest.
Tina.
See, she went to contest, hit select. Now she's
To
using
select
the
this
blue
choice,
button to go down and make her choice.
Pear.
When she finds the one she likes, she'll hit the red button to
You
select it. And
Next,
she'll
to
go
to the next
down,
contest.
and it says
Atlanta
next.
was not Georgia's first capital.
This one asks for
Where are the
4
other locations
selections.
to
Contest.
Savannah,
You selected.
Augusta,
You selected.
Louisville,
You selected.
Milledgeville.
You selected.
And then she's
Next, to
going
go to the
down.
next
What year was Georgia founded?
contest.
1788.
You selected. Next, to go to the next contest.
What is the state tree?
Contest.
The cherry blossom.
You selected. Review. To navigate to the ballot review, press the red select button. To go to the next, your ballot is valid. To ballot
So at this
information.
point, the ATI will read all of your
To
selections,
go to the next
or you can just
contest review-
scroll
contest,
down on the
contest,
blue,
contest,
which we're going to do
contest,
for
print
time's
ballot.
sake,
To print your
and you
ballot,
can print
press
your
the red
ballot by hitting
information.
select.
Print
It
your
gives you
ballot
one
if
more
are
chance to
satisfied with your
review.
choices. Print
You'll print your ballot. And then I've been told that if you have a documented visual challenge, that you can bring your phone into the precinct if you have an app to read your paper ballot, because all voters are
Thank you
asked
for voting.
to ensure
Your
that
ballot
their
has
paper ballot is
successfully printed.
correct.
Please
Ava's
deposit
going to
your
set it
printed
up
ballot
now
into the ballot
to do
scanner
without
using the privacy
the
suite.
audio
To
and
review
just
the message, press
because
the red select
when I was at
button.
Life Inc. A few months ago, some of the voters who had low vision said just when we put it on bigger font, they were able to read it without needing assistance. And while she's doing that, I just want to let you know this system has 3 ways to recount and verify the vote. First, this QR code indicates your selections, the paper ballot itself, and then the scanner, which it slid into, has an optical camera that takes a picture of every ballot. When you put it in the scanner, it doesn't matter if it's up, face up, face down, or whichever way, it will read it. So this is going through the system without the ATI. Yeah, darling, that's all right. She's so sweet. I just had her go through this last night and asked her to help me with this. So I've done demos without the ATI alone, but I thought it would be kind of hard to hold that and bring the laptop closer. So if you don't need the audio, you'll still insert your card here. And I just want to mention, some people, one hang up at some of the polls in Georgia where people were trying to slide it between the black and yellow area. No, it goes in the yellow slot and the chip goes in first. But you'll have a voter card that looks like this, and you'll put the arrow in. So Ava will slide it in. And it needs to go straight in. When I was doing demos in person, some people were trying to kind of push it up or down, and it just needs to go flat in. So if you'll show them how the different text size looks. So that's big. And that's normal. Can y'all see the difference? Okay, now let's look at different views. That's the color view. Some people have macular degeneration, and this black on white is easier for reading. And then there's also a white on black. But then you'll proceed through the ballot. Ava, could you show them just, you make your selections. If suppose you didn't want Cherokee Rose and you wanted daffodil, you can't just hit daffodil. You're going to have to hit Cherokee Rose again and then make your selection. And then you'll go through the ballot this way. And at the end of the ballot, suppose, make an error. Like if we just had 1, 2, and we keep going through, sorry, I'm taking over here, Ava. We got to the end of the ballot. Up here, and I'm going to put it on a color view because it's really obvious in the color view. Right here it said, this ballot, your ballot is valid, but there's warnings, which we look down and it says this contest is undervoted. So you might not have a situation where you've undervoted, but you may have a situation where you've missed a contest. And that's where this upper left-hand box is good to alert you. And what she'll do is just tap on that contest. It'll take her right back. It's undervoted. She'll make more selections, and then she'll go through the rest of her ballot to the end and review it again. And then when she scrolls down, checks again that they're right, the selections she wants, and then she'll print the ballot. And after she prints the ballot, you take out your voter card, give it to a poll worker, and bring your printed ballot to a scanner so that it'll count. If you walk out with the ballot, you don't get to vote again. It's null, it's void. Now, if you look at the ballot and you say, thank you, Ava. If you look at the ballot and say, oh, I made a mistake, you can raise your hand and a poll worker will spoil the ballot and allow you to vote again, but you can't leave the precinct with your ballot. I want to just quickly go over voter registration. If you're not an active or registered voter, you can do that in many ways in Georgia. First, we do have the Department of Drivers Services who allows you to opt in to voting. That's when you renew or change your address and you go into their office or you get a new license. You can also register at my voter page, which is mvp.sos.ga.gov. But when you're using that online system with the Secretary of State, if you're not in the DDS, the Driver's Services system, it won't come up. So you're going to need to manually submit a paper registration, which you'll print off the website. And that's available again at mvp.sos.ga.gov. And then you'll mail it and address it to your county elections office. And the address is listed there for you. It knows what your county is. It'll give you that address. You'll just need to send it to them. Or you can go in person to your county elections office. But everybody needs to be registered 30 days before an election. So the cutoff for the November election is going to be October. I have it written down here. The last day to register is October 5th. But I suggest everybody get registered in the next couple of weeks and have that done. There's also an app you can use. And if you go to securevotegeorgia.com, it'll give you information for this mobile Secretary of State app, and you can register there. You can look at your ballot. There's a lot of things you can do. That My Voter page allows you not only to register to vote, you can find your polling location, you can update your address, you can get information about early voting, where it's at, where's the precincts. You can check on your absentee ballot and provisional ballot requests. You can check out who are your elected officials. You can view your sample ballot, which is really good if you're going in person during COVID, so you spend less time, because inevitably it seems like there's more things on the ballot than you're thinking about. Like we all think of the top ticket contests, but sometimes there's a question, a referendum or a tax question that we haven't considered, that it's really good to review your ballot before you go into the precinct. You can also get a copy of your precinct card there. You know, everybody has an individual responsibility to check their own registration to make sure that it's accurate, up to date, and that when you walk into the precinct and hand over your photo ID, that things will go smoothly. Because we want things to go smoothly, because it makes the lines shorter and it makes more people able to vote more quickly. Let me catch up right here. You know, under House Bill 316, which allotted and earmarked the money for these systems, they made it so that for every 250 voters, there was a system. Now, how those systems go to the different precincts is not up to the Secretary of State. That's the county's decision. The Secretary of State is responsible for providing the equipment and ensuring that the final tally is accurate. Let's talk about advanced voting, because I think if you're not going to do absentee ballot and you really want to use the machine and have that experience on the system, advanced voting is the way to go. So there's 3 weeks before an election in Georgia where you can go in and have lots of time and peace and people to help and fewer people in line to get that voting done. And also there's a Saturday opportunity. And not all states in the United States offer no excuse early voting. Only 24 offer that. Otherwise, you have to have a reason like age or military or a disability. And only 20 states like Georgia offer Saturday voting. So Georgia really does offer so many opportunities to vote. And I'm not sure, because I worked in the media for a while and I felt like we told people about advanced voting. So I'm not really sure where the disconnect is happening, but people just really kind of procrastinate. And then when election day comes and they see these long lines wrapped around, they get frustrated, but they have had at least 16 days previously to vote, so they use their time wisely. And I don't mean to preach, but I'm just trying to save people time, because I know what happens. And those of us who saw the pictures after the June 9th primary, and most of those pictures were all at one precinct in Fulton County at Park Tavern. We have an image that it's happening all over the state, and that's not the case. There are some lines, but a lot of counties, people go right through. So how do voters with a disability make sure that they can cast a vote easily? Well, the first thing is make sure that your registration is current, your phone number, your address. We now have a space for the email. So check your registration, request the absentee ballot. That'll give you a lot of time to review the candidates or the issues. Even my own ballot here in McDuffie County, there were people I wasn't familiar with. So I had time in my kitchen to read up what I could about those people. And make sure to request it early. We can all request, if we're registered already, the absentee ballot today for the November 5th election. November, it's so funny when you get so many dates. The first Tuesday in November. I apologize for that. And if you go in person, do advanced voting, fewer people, Saturday voting. And let me tell you when it's most busy for advanced voting. The most busy days are the first day and the last day, Mondays, when they first open. So gosh, when is the best time to early vote? In the middle of the week, in the middle of the day. I've been to some of the polling areas to take pictures during advanced voting, and I've gone to Chatham a couple times and there's nobody there, you know, just the poll worker, and he's just waiting for somebody to help. Take your time on your contests. You know, with this ATI, when I was at Life Inc., a lot of people were really comfortable with the computer. There were a couple people who it felt like, you know, and me too, you know, she talks in such a way that you really gotta be real patient with her voice. So make sure you have a lot of time if you need to use the audio cues. Take time signing the oath on the back of your envelope so that they won't kick it back and say that it's not your signature. Drop it in the drop box at Chatham County. It's undercover. You can bring your car up and just slip it in. It's a really big box. You know, they had more than 30,000 absentee ballots to count in June. That was phenomenal. It was overwhelming. It was like an avalanche. So the sooner people get it in, because the elections board in Atlanta has decided that they can start opening and ensuring that the ballots are valid, but they can't tally the ballots until after the election ends. So they can already start doing some of the process to take the load off the poll workers. I want to give everybody my contact information. If you have any specific questions or specific needs, I want to help. My number is 470-989-8833. And I want to thank you so much for this opportunity. I want to remind you of a couple more dates. The last day to register is October 5th. The earliest you'll get your absentee ballot is September 15th. And advance voting for the November election starts October 12th. Thank you, Denise.
Well, thank you so much, Sharyl, for a very excellent and informative presentation. I tell you, I've really learned a lot. And voting is a right that we all have and that we all should exercise. And it's good to know that we have options. I'm so excited about the app and accessible voting machines and the option to vote absentee. So thank you so much for sharing that valuable information with us. Does anyone have any questions?
Yep, there was a couple of questions that came up, and I'll let me grab those. I think one let's touch on first is what can people do, Cheryl, if they get to their polling place and they need assistance? What are the steps that are taken and how are the poll workers trained to assist them?
Okay, when you come up, and hopefully there isn't a line, you can just alert a poll worker, but if there's a line, step out of the line and go to the front. There should be a poll worker who is directing people in to the precinct and let them know, I either have an age or a documented disability and I'd like to vote immediately. And that should be honored. That's part of the poll worker training, is those two groups of voters have first right to vote.
Okay, great. So can someone bring someone with them to assist them? You were saying a lot of things that would be hard for someone who was blind or had low vision, which is the kind of language you're using is you put it here or you slide this there. And that's not going to be meaningful to someone who can't see how they're being directed. How are the poll workers themselves prepared ahead of time to assist people with disabilities?
You know, that's going to vary from polling location, how many people they've already served and how much experience they've already gotten with this. You can bring someone in to help you vote. They just cannot tell you how to vote. Let me getting a little.
If you bring someone with you, do they have to sign any kind of documentation, or do they have to prove that they're not an employer or someone that's coercing this person to vote a certain way?
You know, can I get back on that one? Because I'm sorry that I don't know that answer.
Oh, no problem.
I know
appreciate that.
I know that when you're signing your absentee ballot, if someone's going to assist you on your absentee ballot, you need to put down the signature of the assistant and the date that you received assistance on your absentee ballot.
Okay.
But I'm going to write that down, and I will, whichever way is best to communicate to everyone. When you bring an assistant, is there anything they need to sign or verify?
All right, that's great. Yeah, because any kind of, it's important that the poll workers, of course, be trained on how to help people with disabilities to vote accurately, and not in, not in a dismissive manner or in an intimidating way. They need to make it as easy as they do for anyone else. We also had a question from Ariana Mount. She said, Cheryl, can you touch on the voting experience you hope the ATI will bring to disabled voters?
Well, I hope that it will give them the confidence to go in there alone and feel, intimate with their ballot the same way that people who can read the ballot feel that connection. I feel like the explanation will give them the confidence to be independent. Another thing that this offers is called privacy mask. If when you go in and say, I'm going to use the ATI to complete my ballot, you can they will select, you can say, I don't want anybody to see my ballot. Because if you're just listening to it, you don't want to see it, you don't need to see it, and you don't want other people to see it, then you can have them put this privacy mask on. If people are concerned about someone being behind them and kind of, looking at their ballot, although, poll workers are trained not to let people kind of creep on other people like that. But it's called privacy mask. This is all demo numbers, so I'm not giving away any secrets. So I'm going to bring it closer to here. And if the poll worker could hit privacy mask or the assistant before they hit ATI, because this also gives you the option to work with the paddles or the sip and puff. But when this privacy mask is on, you can't see the ballot at all. It's just a blank screen, but you hear the selections through the headphones.
Okay, I see. Interesting. Yeah, that's good to know about. I would have had no idea.
I actually just learned that last night with my buddy.
Yeah, that's great. actually. Did that answer your question, Ariana?
Yes, it did. Thank you. And just another follow-up question. Do you know how many ATIs will be distributed throughout the state, and will there be at least one at every polling location?
Ariana, can I get back to you on that? I want to say yes, there's one ATI at every polling site, but I don't want to tell you incorrectly. And like when I was talking off the cuff and I said, oh, November 5th, November 3rd, the last election in November. So November 3rd, which is the first Tuesday, is election day. And it is the only time you have to declare a party is when it's a primary or a runoff. The general election, you'll have all your selections. And I just want to point out too, if you decide, hey, I want to be nonpartisan and then I can get everybody. No, you don't get everybody on nonpartisan. You just get people who listed as nonpartisan. So you don't get the Democratic or Republicans. Some people asked for nonpartisan and then they said, I didn't get to vote for this. That's just the way Georgia does it.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Ariana, I'll get in touch with you afterwards about the ATI. I'll get that confirmed in the next couple hours. And then about the assistance, I'll get back to Angel. Should I get back to you or Ariana?
Either actually, or both. That's fine. Yeah, it's just good information to have overall. And I don't see any other questions that's popped up in the chat box, but if anybody else has questions for Sharyl, go ahead and unmute yourselves and speak up now if you've got any questions for her.
Sharyl. Sharyl,
Yes, ma'am.
this is Pamela Oglesby.
Hi, sweetheart. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. We know each other. We've met a few times.
Yeah, I called in. We had asked a question of you a while back, and I don't know, maybe I missed that part, about people that are deaf, and would somebody in the polling place be able to help them, or do they have any poll workers that are capable of signing or anything like that for people that are deaf?
And I asked about that, Ms. Oglesby, and because if there was a state law and every precinct had to do that, it might be, I hate to say it, but like a financial hurdle for smaller
I
counties.
understand.
So
Yeah.
it's really something that's a choice on that own precinct. And I know, you know, my own son has praxia, and when I wanted him to learn sign language, they said, well, so many people don't know it. So it was difficult for me to make the choice whether for him to learn it. So the point I'm trying to make is, I think we're in a population in a time where not a whole bunch of people know, and I think it would be difficult for the polls to find people who they can count on to accurately do the sign. So I was told that if a person feels they'll need assistance in that way, to bring someone that they trust.
Okay. The other thing that crossed my mind, though, is there any possibility that you might be able to suggest that if a person's deaf and they want to vote, that they could come advance vote at the election board, and maybe the election board could have somebody that could sign?
Yeah, or even, you know, with the hearing challenge, they could always write something and the other person could write it down. Like
Okay.
a specific question, what do I need to do for this? And then the poll worker could write it.
Okay.
Anybody would be able to do that because that's one of the qualifications, to speak, read, and write English.
Yes. I was just trying to figure out several different ways that deaf people could be helped.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Pamela.
Hi, my name is Jackie, and I wanted to ask a question going back to when you were talking about registering to vote. When my daughter got her and I checked, you know, do they want her to vote, and checked it and everything, I turned it in, and I have to go back because I went to her doctor to get doctor would have on her ID that she has autism. And I wanted to know At that time, did they her to vote? Because you spoke on it and I didn't clearly understand. Or can I go back to get that ad? Do I do something? Because they said they were registering her to vote, and I heard you say something about going to the election office and registering to vote. I was a little confused.
Okay, so I mentioned how if you go to get your driver's license and it's the first time or an out-of-state change, an update or a renewal, you have to actually opt out to not be registered to vote. There's a little box, because I did it a few months ago, and I had to, just leave it there because they automatically register you to vote. Now, if you don't have a driver's license, then you can go through mvp.sos.ga.gov and fill out the form and email it, mail it, fax it, or drop it by the elections office.
Okay, she has ID. So they asked about her registering to vote, and I checked yes. So I was wondering, do I need to do more after that, listening to you? Is it because you have to have a driver's license and not a Georgia ID is counted? Is it something more that I need to do?
The Georgia ID will work. And so she should already be in the DDS system, which is connected to Secretary of State. So what I would do is go to mvp.sos.ga.gov and put her name in and the county and the birthday. Her registration should come up if that visit to the Driver's License Bureau was more than a couple weeks ago, because sometimes it takes 2 weeks. But after that, she should be in the system. Now, if she's not already in the system, you can either call Chatham and ask them if they see it, or you can go ahead and do the manual registration just to ensure that she's registered for November.
And with add, I'm going to add on there that she has to get the assistance. I heard you say that you have to have some kind of proof that you have a disability in order to get this assistance. By that, her Georgia ID, would that automatically be in the system already that she has a disability by me getting that attached to her Georgia ID?
I don't think that it would be in that document. I would, my son has Downs, which people visually can see. He also has apraxia, which people can't see, but I have, documentation from doctors. That's his diagnosis. I don't know that his apraxia would give him front of the line preference. Usually it's a physical challenge or, did I answer your question? I would just bring a little something if you want her to get to the front of the line, because maybe she doesn't want to wait so long, and just mention, she has this diagnosis and waiting in a long line would not be good for her. And would you please let her move to the front of the line? I think they'll be compassionate, and especially during advance voting, because there's not all those folks waiting.
But you said that they cannot assist it in their voting process. So if they're not cognitively able to go through it alone without some assistance, I think you were mentioning about that the mail-in ballot would be mail-in their ballot going, because
Yes, when you do the absentee ballot, if someone assisted you, you do need to sign the name of the assistant, and you can bring an assistant to come in and help you navigate the ballot, but they're not allowed to tell you how to vote.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome. The ATI is also good for people who, like my son is cognitively, I think he's really smart, but his reading comprehension isn't superlative. So if he were to have the headphones on and he could hear the names, he would probably recognize who he's only 16, but almost 16, but he would be able to recognize who he's interested in. So I just want to say, for people who maybe have some literacy challenges, that's a good choice for them too, is to use the ATI.
Okay.
Some really excellent questions. Anybody else? Was there another question in the chat, Angel?
I don't think so. Let me pull this up. Yeah, there was something in the chat. Let me see what it is. Okay, there is a question here. Do the absentee ballots have to be postmarked by a certain date in order to be accepted, Cheryl?
Okay, some states allow it to just be postmarked before the election day for it to count. Georgia is not that way. If it is not received by the elections office by 7 p.m. on the election day, it's rejected. Because of COVID, I just want to really highlight, emphasize, impress upon people that they are going to be inundated with absentee ballots. I do not suggest you waiting until 6:59 to deliver that ballot, because if you just happen to forget to sign your oath or something else and they need to contact you, and you can fix that ballot within 3 days. But really, my personal advice is to get those absentee ballots in at least 2 weeks before. So if you're going to do the mail, I would get it in the mail 3 weeks before. If you're going to drop it off at the Chatham drop box, you can do it 2 weeks before. The law says something different. The law says till 7 p.m. that day. The law says you can ask for the absentee ballot 3 days before the election. But as your voter education coordinator and someone who has a passion for voting, I want your vote to count. So please get it in early.
Great.
Cheryl.
Yeah, great advice.
Cheryl,
Yes, ma'am.
this is Pam Oglesby again. I was just thinking, I heard on TV that some states, and I don't know if Georgia did it, have we had any movement on people being able to send in their absentee ballots without the postage on it?
Okay, so they want you to put a stamp on it. Please put a stamp on it. That'll ensure it'll get there. But between you and me, if somebody accidentally forgets to put postage on it, it's not going to go lost in the mail. The Postal Service has assured elections offices they will deliver, and the fee for that postage will be charged back to the county.
Okay.
Well, go ahead and put a stamp on it to be sure. But
Oh yeah, I will, but I knew
accident.
that some people were saying that they were challenged to get the postage. Somebody even said that they couldn't afford the postage. So I was just trying to make sure that we all understand clearly how that is to work if you did not have the postage.
Yeah, and for me, I think an even bigger issue with the postage is people who are high risk for this virus being concerned about going to the post office and waiting in line to get the postage. And I know
Correct.
the pandemic first started, I ordered a bunch of stamps and I thought, oh, I'm going to get them next week. It took 5 or 6 weeks to get those stamps. So I wouldn't even recommend doing mail stamp purchase orders. I really feel like the drop box, it's got a 24-hour surveillance camera. It shuts, nothing can be pulled out. It's like a library drop box, or it's like a deposit box when you go to your bank and make a deposit near the ATM. I really feel like if you can do that, then you're going to cut out the middleman. You don't have to worry about it getting lost. You don't have to, just use the drop box. Or hand it in person. I mean, it would just, either one. If you have to do mail, that's good too. But number 1, use the drop box. Number 2, go in person, hand it to the elections people. Number 3, mail. And then 4 would be doing advance voting in the middle of the week during the middle of the day. The last way I would vote during this pandemic is on election day.
And many people are not going to be able to do anything other than drop it in the mail, because a lot of disabled people don't drive, can't drive, and can't get anyone to bring them or even bring it out. Everybody doesn't have somebody,
I know.
So many people, when I get mine, of which they generally, like you say, send it quite early, I sit down immediately, fill it out, put the stamp on it, and send it back, because I can't make people do what I want done.
And if there are some laws about who can bring it in. You kind of brought that up a little bit. People who live in your household, you know, or close family, mother, father, sister, brother, husband, they can bring it in, but not extended family, and certainly, unfortunately, not your church. I want to just touch on this really quick. I've been reading in the news about these third parties sending people solicitation to get their absentee ballot done for them. Some of them may be valid. Some of them may be doing very good work. But for me, I'm going to do it through the Secretary of State's office, because I don't want a middleman, because I want to make sure it gets to where it needs to go, because it's important.
Yeah, I wouldn't even trust that, because I wouldn't know what they would might or might not do with it. But above all else, like I'm saying, I trust the Postal Service. I just know I need to do it as early as possible so that they have time without any problem.
That's a good point. Thank you. And I just want to apologize for some of the things that I wasn't quite certain about, but you can count on me to follow up and give you the right answer. I just don't want to give you the wrong answer.
Well, we thank you, Sharyl, for a very informative presentation and extremely helpful. And I'd like to thank all of our participants for your input and for the insightful questions. And just be on the lookout. Again, we will have a follow-up meeting to share more voting resources and to get feedback about your stories and voting experiences. This session was recorded, so I'm sure it will be posted so that you can refer back to it. But again, thanks to Sharyl, thanks to the live staff, thanks to all of our participants for a very wonderful presentation. Are there any other comments? Our executive